If I say Rat King, you say...
Oh, no.
I would say, you can't tell the story without it.
What's outside?
Monsters.
Great first episode. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Starting off strong with the Curtis and Viper reference, which I love, and new story points that are just beyond intriguing, and I'm so excited to jump back into this world. I think back to the Bill and Frank episode from season 1 and how it was just such a defining moment for the series. It just made everything so much more intimate and deeper, and I mean, won awards and was so impactful for fans and people watching it. Did that response influence the way you approach some of the other characters in season 2 for more kind of intimate character-driven moments? And I'm seeing some hints of it in the first episode.
I mean, yes and no. No, in that we didn't want to create a template to say, oh, that was successful in season 1, now we must have a bottle episode about some side character, and that would have been, I think, the wrong approach. The correct approach was like, let's adapt it in the same process that we applied for season 1, where we interrogate every moment and try to figure out what can work exactly as is, what needs some changes, or what requires some new material. And then that journey leads us to these really interesting places. Sometimes it might lead us to something like the Bill and Frank episode, and if we get there organically and that's where the story wants to go, we will go there. And if not, I don't know if we have anything exactly one-to-one like the Bill and Frank episode in this season, but we have a lot of moments where those side exploration lead to beautiful expansions of The Last of Us that I think fans of the game and now fans of the show will really appreciate.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking about in the first episode we've seen in the trailer, and there's some hints of Eugene, who I only really knew from like a Polaroid and some, what do you call it, like environmental
storytelling,
storytelling and lore of like. And so, can you talk a little bit about this character, why he stuck out to you, and why you chose to kind of expand his story?
Ooh, you're asking like some spicy right up against the line questions, aren't you? Eugene was one of my, the library where you find Eugene's story in the game was one of my favorite parts. Like the IGCs building in there were amazing.
What are IGCs?
What are IGCs?
In-game cinematics.
Thank you. Oh yeah, they're these like little itty bitty cinematic beats. So like, for example, in the game, when you're in this library, there's one section where you find all of Eugene's old VHS porn stack. And there's a little interactive, you can click on it, you can read all the little different VHS porns that he's collected over the course of his life. It's my favorite beat, maybe in the whole game. But he is such an exciting character, and it was, I'm gonna back up into this answer, but with games, you're locked into the playable characters. You're locked into Abby, you're locked into Ellie, a little bit Joel. But here we had an opportunity, because of the passive nature of watching TV, to jump into different perspectives. And so Eugene is this really beloved idea from the game that we had an opportunity to give life to.
Right. I like that. Abby's introduction is obviously a big flashpoint for fans, and with Caitlin Dever stepping into this role, can you talk a little bit about, there had to be steps for support here, because I mean, you're obviously, you know what I'm talking about, but how did you approach introducing her, but then also supporting Caitlin behind the scenes?
Yeah, as far as introducing her, in the game, it's a bit different because you're playing as her. To touch on some of the stuff that Halley was talking about, when you play as a character, I can't explain it, but there's a certain empathic connection that is made there because you are them. You're seeing the world through their eyes. You're moving as them. You're making choices as them. We don't have that empathic shortcut that we have in the interactive medium, but we have drama. We have context. We have backstory. So there's certain things that are revealed about Abby much later in the story that we pulled up in order to, again, use the drama of the TV show to get you to sympathize with her, to get you to root for her very early on in episode 1. And then everything expands organically from there. Some beats are going to be very similar, the fans will know. Some will be quite different. As far as protecting Caitlin or how we work with her, we were very open with Caitlin about what this role is and what it isn't, and the kind of reaction you might see from fans out there. Now, luckily, we haven't seen any of that. Nothing has come to fruition. Fans have been mostly very supportive. And I think I'm hopeful that people will see the complexity of this character, because Caitlin is so good. She brings such a ferocity and yet vulnerability to this character.
Yep.
She's very driven, and yet she's very loving of the people around her. I expect our audience will see a very complex, very interesting character that creates a bit of trouble for Joel and Ellie.
Right. Well, I was gonna say, because I think you kind of hinted at this, but narratively in the game, you play as Ellie for a while, and then you switch to Abby, and then you get kind of the empathy for her. So, how did you weave the story this time around, and how does it differ from the game?
Well, it's hard to talk about it without spoiling it.
Right.
because
This is what I would say. It is really hard. 'Cause it's
but I will say it's something that we had many conversations about, because so much of the story is based in structure. You can't separate the structure from what the story is. And fundamentally, there's a lot of things that are going to feel very similar. But as far as interweaving, I can't say much other than to say we couldn't do much of that in the game. Because in the game, not only are you playing as these characters, you're upgrading them, you're changing their behavior and their capabilities as through choices you are making as the player. If we were to jump back and forth, that would be very disruptive from a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah.
In the show, we have more of that flexibility, so we have the option to do that. Now, whether we chose to do it or not, you have to watch the season.
Right. Well, season 2, the season 2 it covers such the game. Sorry, part 2 of the game is a huge story. I assume we're not getting through the whole game in season 2. So how did you find? I know you're not going to say what it is, but how did you find what the stopping point would be, and will fans be surprised by where that is? Or if you can tell
No,
us.
you're doing it. You're doing it.
I'll do it.
It's a spicy tomato. I can't.
The way we like to work, me, Halley, and Craig, is we have to have a destination. Without a destination, I don't know how to make narrative or creative choices, because you often are presented as a director or as an executive producer, whatever the role is, with more options than you could put into the story. Therefore, we must know the destination, because for me to be able to choose them is to say, okay, which one gets us closer to what the story's ultimately about that ending. And the ending usually tells you what the story's about. And then we work backwards from there. So we start with the ending of game 2. That is the ending of the show. And we work our way backwards and we broke the whole story as if we were just to make one giant season. What would that look like? What are all the major beats that would have to happen? And then said, okay, that clearly cannot fit in a season.
Yeah.
We think this much can fit in the season, so we have some play within here. Within here, what is the best breaking point? Oh, this makes the most sense to us. Now let's work backwards from there. Now we can get into all the details into this part, and that gives us season 2. And that turned out to be 7 episodes. And so now we know everything that has to happen next and where we have to go, but how many episodes or seasons that is our homework for what happens after this season if enough people watch it and we get renewed for a 3rd season.
Okay, well, I have to go, but if I say Rat King, you say...
Oh, no.
I would say, you can't tell the story without it.